Athanasiou. I got more pronunciation of this guy's name than you could imagine. Every time I practiced one, someone told me it was supposed to be something else. So, would George Athanasiou please come forward? I hope he recognizes his name. As a totally objective audience, I'm sure you'll agree with me that there are very few places in the world with a sporting heritage richer than our own. As it turns out, our next inductee actually comes from an area of the world which is replete with a sport history studied for centuries before there was a written sport history in Nova Scotia. George Athanasiou was born in Samos, Greece on March 15, 1955. It's the incredibly good fortune of Nova Scotians that he came here in 1967 with all the passion for the sport of soccer for which his countrymen are famous. Although just 12 years old, young George began playing second division soccer with the Halifax King Central Nova Scotia Soccer League. He finished his playing as a district all-star and captain of the Hellas Club, where his friends remember him as a young, slender, quick center forward who was easy to knock down, but who got up faster than anyone else in the game. He continued with them until a car accident curtailed his playing career. It didn't take George long to start developing a list of what have become known to his friends as Georgisms. A Georgism being a linguistic slip, which helps define George in ways that delight his many friends and co-workers. He's famous for, "It's all water over the bridge." That coach is just like every other Tom and Dick. And the favorite of the office, that's like comparing apples with apples. Some say his volunteer work exceeds 40 hours a week, a feat made possible only because he lives on less sleep than that required by the rest of us. In addition to his hellish work, he's also gone beyond the pale, managing the Nova Scotia-Canada Games soccer team, being a founder of the Nova Scotia Soccer League, being president of Halifax Senior Soccer, and by serving on the executive of Soccer Nova Scotia. George Athanasiou also spent long hours coaching. He coached on an as-needed basis in the Hellas system throughout his playing career. His 1982 indoor team winning the provincial title. He serves every level, all ages, and both genders. In 1994, he coached the Samos women's team in the Halifax City League. He founded the King of Donair Soccer Club in 1983 and made it a perennial powerhouse. They twice won the Nova Scotia Senior, twice won the Atlantic Championships, and finished in the top 5 in Canada 4 times. He started an indoor soccer league in which his King of Donair team won 236 out of 250 games, en route to 5 Metro Championships. National recognition came when they finished second in the Canadian Championships, both in 1989 and again in 1991. In 1987, he also coached the under-18 Provincial All-Star squad to its first Atlantic title and a 5th place in Canada, the best we had ever managed. George is generally known as a good guy with money. There was a time, however, when he and Lewis Page took the under-18 Nova Scotia squad to Vancouver. George's lack of faith in credit cards led him to tuck the $1,500 expense money for the trip into the sartorial, resplendent brown socks he'd carefully chosen to match his chic summer outfit of button-down shirt and pocketless shorts. After watching the kids frolicking in the pool for a while, and of course goaded by them into taking some sort of action, he provided the best cannonball of the day, certainly the best one anyone had done while still fully clothed. He surfaced to a screamingly delighted reception, only to realize that $1,500 in small bills was now floating all over the pool. One of his smart-ass kids asked him if that was the way the Greek mafia laundered their money. At the next day's breakfast, the national staff member introduced George as yet another example of the great Canadian swimmers to have come out of the East. Finally, in 1989, he figured out a way to eke out a living by expanding his soccer tutelage to include all of the province. It was at this juncture that he undertook the professional position of development coordinator of Soccer Nova Scotia. Since that time, he no longer spends 40 hours a week in soccer. Now, his friends say he spends 70 hours a week in soccer. His happiest day came when, in January 1995, after only 7 years of lobbying, Soccer Nova Scotia got land on which to build its own soccer complex. His most Georgian day started with his barging into the office to explain that he'd just seen a horrible motorcycle accident in which the driver's head had been capitulated right off. He finished the day by throwing 3 new AT&T phones out the window for their refusal to work. He then screamed at Stephen Hart to call a phone company to have these damn defective phones removed. Steve finally managed to explain it. They wouldn't work for anyone else either if they did as George had done. Namely, hold the phone to his ear and bang out his desired phone numbers on an adjacent calculator. His very sympathetic staff broke into peals of laughter when he said that for the first time since any of them could remember, he was going to take the rest of the day off. The monumentally long work days have resulted in Nova Scotia now having a high-performance center network to identify and train year-round promising young soccer players. He's initiated programs to improve both individual and team play. Soccer Nova Scotia membership has increased from 6,777 in 1988, when he started, to over 22,000. During these tight times, he's turned Soccer Nova Scotia from a financially inept organization into one that has consistently turned a sizable profit. Tonight is certainly not the first time George Athanasiou, I'm sorry, I have tried, has been honored for his work on behalf of soccer here in the province. He was named Executive of the Year in the Metro League. He won a Sport Nova Scotia Service Award. He's the only person who twice received the Soccer Nova Scotia Award of Merit, and he was twice named Soccer Nova Scotia's Coach of the Year. Ladies and gentlemen, permit me to present to you the driving force behind the development of Nova Scotian soccer for the past 2 decades. Great administrator, successful lobbyist, wonderful teacher, successful promoter, an imaginative developer of provincial talent, a guy who many times has taken money out of his own pocket to help an underprivileged kid travel with his team. A man who's devoted the whole of his life to making soccer the great success it is here in Nova Scotia. Greece's loss, our gain. A hearty Nova Scotia at Faristo. To Mr. Soccer in Nova Scotia, George Athanasiou.
I'd ask Bob Shaw, Director of Marketing, Sheraton Casinos, to please join us on stage for the presentation. Come into the light, George. Come into the light. Congratulations. That's a very impressive story that Sandy just related, and it's all true. But, you know, the most impressive thing is that since 1989, you've been development coordinator for Soccer Nova Scotia. A dramatic increase in the number of youngsters playing the game in Nova Scotia, from 6,700 to 14,000 over that period of time. What has brought this about, besides George's hard work?
There's no question the key to our success lies with the volunteers, just like any other sport. You have volunteers, you have success. If you don't have volunteers, you get some problems. And I've been fortunate to have a lot of good volunteers. A lot of them are out here tonight. Thank you very much. If it wasn't of you, I probably wouldn't be here.
You've got your fan club out there, and well-deserved fan club.
There may be a fan club right now, but they're all going to die after this.
If you could pick one event from your career to look back on tonight, what would it be that has pleased you most?
The one that pleased me the most happened very recently during an audit by the Nova Scotia Department, Sport and Recreation, I guess it's called. Soccer Nova Scotia finished first overall. There were 3 categories. We led in every one of them. That meant that I accomplished my vision. Soccer number 1, soccer is number 1. Thank you.
Soccer is on the move, and George is leading the charge. Thank you, George.